Then we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. The first thing on our agenda today is the consent agenda. May 3rd minutes and a couple of employment with homeless partners, driving families.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. First up, we have John Rasmussen. Discussion on the Roads Operations Center and the facility study session. John, you're up.
Sure. Good morning. Today I brought in the designers. We changed some of the scope on our design. I was going to have them go over those changes so you can know what the changes are, I guess, to help bring the cost down on the roads facility.
We've looked at both buildings and, there's not a whole lot to these buildings. So once we start looking at it, it's looking at bigger systems. So we've looked at mechanical systems, we've looked at the exterior of the building. So we made up a whole list, went through a lot of items with John and came up with cost. And so today we'll just kind of walk through at a high level what we are changing. So I'll have Wyatt actually first start off. So this list is basically a
Kim, hold
list.
for 1 second.
Sure.
Remind the board what the original bid was. We only received one. Wasn't it about 10 million?
Yeah, it's nine. I want to say it was 9.7.
Pardon me?
9.700.
Okay, thank you.
So what Ryan's getting out right now is the list of changes that we are looking at for VE options, and then there's renderings of what the facility will look like. So, yep.
So the bid was 9.7, and your guesstimate was?
We were 7.8, I think, is what we were at with all the contingencies.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. If you want to walk through what we're changing with mechanical systems.
Yeah. So there's really two options we put together. You either keep the geothermal, which is in the project, just an idea on pricing. So geothermal, we did the same size system like 2 years ago-ish, and we're like 75% higher cost-wise for the same exact system, the only difference being the vault. So we thought, okay, we'll take the vault out, move that into the building, into the mezzanine of the maintenance building. Not a ton of savings, but that would be 15,000. So of the two options, it's basically geo or no geo. So option one would be to keep the geo and modify some components within that system. Oh, this was, okay, I'm looking at, sorry, I had a different list here. Okay, so option one, so keeping the geo system, we'd remove the vault, we remove the DOAS unit, so we have two, each building has an outside air system that preconditions and does heat recovery. Those units had quite a bit of cost associated with it, so we take those units out. We would then take the heat pumps that we already had in the building, we have to upsize those for the increased ventilation load, and we'd have a reheat coil put with them, hot gas reheat, to provide some level of dehumidification since the original unit was supposed to do that. So the system from a quality standpoint is still good. It's not as good, but it still provides what we're trying to obtain for the building. It's pretty common. It's not an uncommon thing to do.
What kind of savings?
So the total savings we calculated to go through, this will be, well, let me finish going through this and then I'll give you the total number. So that's upsize the heat pumps. The office has a mezzanine in it, and Kim can highlight some of this, but that has a mezzanine in it. If we get rid of the DOAS unit there, the dedicated outdoor area unit, we can put all the heat pumps in the ceilings. So there's some architectural savings as well. And then that also simplifies the roof line. So the total number we'd identified for those was 15,000 to remove the vault and 382,000 for the rest of it. So that's architectural, mechanical, and everything.
So by doing this change, we had a mechanical mezzanine in that office building, which changed the roof lines for that building. We can take out that mezzanine and we can simplify the whole roof line, bring everything down. So that's where the big savings comes in.
Now, when we're going through this VE deal, is this just for one of the buildings or just for both buildings?
That number I gave would be for both.
Okay.
Now, I think it's important to note that this was as of last month, and these, there's still obviously inflation occurring, and as we find out more, we'll try to update these numbers with John and keep everybody in the loop on that, but this is where it was at when we looked at this, a few weeks ago. Any questions on that the first kind of item we discussed before I move to the next one.
I think it's important we keep the geothermal.
Mhm.
They really do.
Yeah, and that was what we suggested that as well. I mean, there was to go to more of a really simple like furnace type approach like you'd have at your house was an option, you'd save more, but I mean, it's just not as high quality of a system and.
The long run,
Right, right.
it's such a big deal anymore.
Okay, so the second one is like in the office building, we would swap out the water heating tank style system for domestic water to an instantaneous system. There wasn't a ton of savings there, about $10,000. So that's a really obvious one for us to look at. And then I'll hand it to you in the next one.
So a couple of electrical ones. The service, most of them revolve around the service of the first two, I guess. So the service into the building, based on the distance from Eastern Hills, Mid-America was gonna have us put in a 5-inch conduit, which is extremely expensive right now. We're able to talk with them, if we can put a pedestal about halfway down the drive to shorten that run, then we can get by with a 4-inch conduit. And then typically Mid-America will require a spare conduit that typically is not used ever. And so they'll eliminate the need for that conduit on this project since it's not gonna continue on or be reused. So we'll have that one 4-inch conduit versus two 5-inch conduits on the primary side. And then on the secondary side, we had the copper conductors were included in the bid. So switching those off to aluminum feeders for the mains. And we typically would allow when we do that, smaller feeders like panel board feeders and stuff like that to become aluminum versus copper. So there's some savings there. And then probably the biggest one electrical was to remove the security system. We'd still rough in for it, provide conduits into the doors and all the rough in so that the system could be added in the future easily, but take that cost of cameras and access control cabling and all that out of the project for the time being. And then the doors would be keyed.
Okay.
You have those costs itemized, what's the estimated reduction in item 3?
For Mid-America pedestal, we had
Yeah.
10 to 15,000, we had 10,000 included, but. And then the aluminum feeders was 20, and the security system removal was 50.
What's the biggest detriment to switching from copper to aluminum?
There really isn't any, as long as they're using the bigger conductors, there's not.
Okay.
The new technologies, aluminum conductors are fine.
You want me to speak to the next one?
Sure.
So, the next one's gonna be on item, let's see, number 6. So this would be combining the two septic systems, so I've got it here, I just want to start with. Originally, we had two separate septic systems, one for the maintenance building, one for the office, so we'd look at combining them, which would allow us to reduce the combined size of the field. So that number was estimated to be about $20,000. I think we'd go out the south side still, right, Kim? That was the plan?
Yeah.
You got a wash bay for the trucks, John?
Yes.
Will that go to septic or will that go to a pit?
So they'll go to a pit. There's an underground tank that's still in the project.
All right.
The next couple of items deal with downspouts. We looked at the overall area. We're gonna reduce the amount of downspouts. Plus we were taking the drainage underground so that it just didn't spill out onto the drive. We're gonna eliminate that and have it just spill out onto grade for those two, for the downspouts for both buildings. So,
Does that also go to the pits?
and right now they do not. They'll
Okay.
just spill out on grade.
What kind of savings?
To remove the underground drains, and that was about 112,000. Reducing downspouts is probably about 26, somewhere around there,
130?
close to, yeah.
So put my safety hat on for a second. I mean, I'm assuming that you got a grade built into like a slight pitch built into our grade so that there's water goes away.
Correct, yeah.
But I mean, my fear is right outside. I mean, you look at this picture, you got a downspout right outside a door. you know, so we're gonna deal with ice issues and all that kind of stuff, I mean, I don't.
Yeah, and we can look at the
Okay.
spacing of some of those to make sure that they do get farther away. They'll be splash box and do what we can, but that was one reason why we were taking it underground originally.
What's the savings on that one?
To remove the full underground, was 112,000. And there is an option, I mean, we could do a mixture. I mean, obviously on the backside of the office building, we could dump that to grade, there is no pavement out there.
Yeah, I just worry about, you know, you got overhead doors and you got people coming in and out of there. First guy slips and breaks his back, you know, then we're not saving 100,000 anymore,
Right.
you know? But that one, I don't know, doesn't matter, this isn't gonna be a deal breaker, I'm just talking, taking out loud.
Okay, take the next one again. So we had suggested changing the pressure washer for the wash bays from gas to electric. Not a lot of savings, but about $5,000 there. Cuts down on potential leakage points too by eliminating flues through the roof. So minor item, but some savings there.
What was that on, you're on 9, right?
Yes,
What was the cost on that?
$5,000 we estimated.
But does that include the, I guess, the guesstimate on where gas and electric are gonna be as far as an operational side then?
No, we look purely at the first cost side of it.
Okay.
There are some, the gas ones are able to do a little bit higher pressure and a little bit more water. It's the other major advantage of the gas. But the savings are there with the electric.
What do we got now in those places?
Now we have gas-fired heaters on them.
And the one in Hancock?
Then number 10 is just to revise the lighting package. We were looking to be early on with the contractor they thought they could get. We ended up with $12,000 what we thought we could get out of the lighting package just by making some fixture changes.
These all LED.
Yes. Yeah, we still have to meet the energy code, so they'd be LED with lighting controls.
Okay.
Number 11 on that list is removing the clear story windows on the maintenance building. So originally there was a line of windows along the roof line, kind of splitting the heights. So we're getting rid of that, simplifying the roof line. And that's about $100,000 savings.
100?
Yes.
And then going into the office building, we had, an overhang canopy system. We're looking at doing just a pre-built MAPES type canopy system that would hang from the building rather than a structure out there. It's about $40,000. And then for both buildings, we had originally designed it with precast wall panels. One of the considerations with that was with the precast wall panels, you can build without having to do the more cool weather protection, you know, like with masonry and have to heat that up. So we are looking at taking that out and going with a wainscot level of masonry, and then it'd be the pre-manufactured metal building system above that. So that masonry would be about 5 feet, I think is what we,
On
I think it
the
varies.
office building, it'd be about 3'4", and then the maintenance building, it'd be a little bit higher at the base at 7'4" to provide some protection for the metal building around the garage doors. And then it needs to go up to about 14 feet around the mezzanine, just kind of to support that mezzanine structure. So a couple different heights in there of the CMU.
Did you look at like a poured wall below that?
The precast wall panel.
Yeah, well, yeah.
We did, again, cost-wise.
Okay.
Yeah, we've looked at that and we've talked with the precast manufacturers and,
What I'm looking to see is we get the biggest bang for the buck.
sure,
And that building in 50 years is still usable.
right? Yep.
What's the savings on 13 too?
We've got, replaced I think we're at 154,000,
How much?
154. One of the smaller items, We specified Detriment paint for, you know, your exterior doors, your bollards. It's a paint that doesn't have to be for epoxy in especially wet areas or high use areas. It's a coating that doesn't need to be reapplied very often. It's more expensive running, but taking that out to go to Sherwin-Williams, about a $7,500 savings, $7,500. And then we had an enclosure for the trash bins. We're just completely getting rid of that. That we figured was about 60 grand. And then putting this bid package together, we are considering doing the office building as a pure alternate. So then that way we can see what the full cost is of that building, and if altogether is too expensive, at least you have a separate cost for the maintenance building.
If we do something like that, John, where are you gonna office out of, where you're at currently?
Say that again?
Let's just say that we don't accept the alternate of the office building, where are you gonna office that out, where you're at currently?
Yeah, I have a presentation too after they're done, so that's like plan B of this presentation.
Oh,
You're ahead of us.
okay.
So, can some of these items be added as alternatives to people bidding?
We certainly could, if you wanted to see, you know, if we wanted to, you know, instead of the masonry, if we wanted to do precast wall panels, we could put the precast in as an add alternate, just so you can see what the difference in cost would be.
I'm kind of leaning more toward that, the downspout thing. Getting that all run off the nail rather than running. Can't remember. So, would I be correct in saying that the office building would be east of the shop then? Does it, I mean, it shows both of them here. Are they?
It's actually to the west.
Yeah.
It's to the west. It kind of overlooks that little valley there. It's kind of the edge of that pad.
And then the
On the west side.
mechanics building is behind it?
Yes. Looks like
So I'm looking at this. So you come to the office building first?
Yes.
Yes.
Come in the driveway?
That's correct.
The image is looking north.
Yeah.
This picture is. Okay.
that's not what the site looks like.
Pardon?
That's not at all what the site looks like.
Okay.
The building arrangement's fine.
Okay, okay.
Melvin, projector on.
Sure.
David? Or let me ask you, Kim. Is there any IT equipment included into this?
The cabling and the infrastructure is included, but not like
Not their
switches and
equipments, yeah.
hardware.
What's your estimate? Did you give an estimate to us for this, David?
It's been a while, but I did. I could look it up and see.
With those, the maintenance building, you've got them configured east-west, correct?
Yes.
I guess one of the things Justin said was about ice in the winter. Be nice to have those garage doors facing south.
We're kind of locked in on the site grading, I guess, just is what it is, but yeah,
Just wanna comment on that.
at least they're not facing north, I guess. I don't know how much sun we'll get out of the east.
Are they now?
No, they're facing east and west.
You can't.
Oh, they, okay.
Oops. I'll let them get done with the architect here. you guys have any more questions about them, and I'll just go over the project and the funds we have.
Go ahead. I'm good.
Well, what does each bay cost? I mean, if we have less bays, does that even move the needle?
I mean, we did look at some of that. Unfortunately, you can't look at a bay as a cost per square foot.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, I can't remember when we looked at the wash bay, if that,
What? You guys try to keep the same footprint, which I completely respect, but I'm just curious if we lowered the scope of this thing a little bit, I mean, would that, John, maybe this is what you're gonna present, but I mean, could you operate effectively? I mean,
We're in obsolete buildings
$8
now, I
million
don't,
for a building is a lot of money. And there's a lot
Right.
of folks out there that are gonna have a lot to say about that, and I'm very cautious to spend that kind of money on a building when it should be, in a lot of ways, going to the road. So,
Right.
you know,
I guess I don't wanna build anything obsolete either, so.
no, I understand that too. I mean, I understand both sides of this. I'm just curious if you can scope this down even and still be able to accomplish your mission. Anyway.
Yeah, some of the bays, you know, it's just empty space after we pay for the mechanicals, the mechanicals are almost the same, I guess, as far as once we started. It's kind of a base cost there, then those empty bays are probably the cheapest part of the build we have.
there's not much to these buildings. And
No,
yeah, when we started looking at, removing a bay, it just, for future growth for equipment and everything, and
okay.
I guess I'll get to this part here. If you have any more questions for them, we can back up. But really, we started this thing as, our facilities are 50 years old now. We either have to renovate them or replace them. We had to do something. So that's kind of why we're in the situation we're in. We need to come up with some sort of answer. When I got into this, when we had these buildings built and we had all this infrastructure out there, we were 86 or 87 employees. We're 65 now. So we're 20 employees less. So those buildings made sense back then. I don't know that they make sense now. All that was attrition and downsizing and do more with less and all those mantras, I guess. But really, we've kind of made up for the loss of employees with the size of equipment and technology and all these other fixes that kind of kept us operational that way. Get the next one. So when I started looking at this, trying to figure out the facilities, the first plan was just to rebuild everything where it was, remodel and put some new steel in the buildings and do all that work. But it really didn't make sense. So we started looking at where we have equipment, where we have stockpiles, can we reduce equipment? Can we get people driving less? So started looking at that. If I was to start from scratch, how would I build what we have today? And would I do it differently and would it be more efficient? So the goal, probably back in 2018 was, could we become 2% more efficient? And I think it's almost tongue in cheek. Could you be 2% more efficient? And I think everybody in the room would say, yeah, you could be 2% more efficient. So if you go to the next slide, that was the goal. And we kind of crushed it. So we started going through it in, I forgot what government, maybe it was Brant said, he wanted all this efficiency stuff. It kind of got in my head. And really he was right, because the greatest source of revenue I have as a department is efficiency. If I spend 20 million a year and I'm 2% more efficient, that's starting to add up some money. So we worked on efficiencies. We looked at drive times, route areas, wages during those drive times, the equipment we have to buy, the water heaters, the pressure washers, all that stuff. Utilities as far as the efficiency of a modern building versus a 50-year-old building, and then salvage value of the buildings we have. And we came up with just efficiencies, $312,100 a year. When I started this thing, we're probably about $200,000. And then I kind of made this chart here. So a 50-year design life in the building, that's what we're running our buildings now. Obviously, the tall lines, you can tell we have lots of costs in there, right? And this little itty bitty chunk there is the efficiency. But you know, over the course of 37 years, we actually pay for the improvement. And not only that, we still have 13 years of life left, so we put another $4 million in our pocket. When I started this, before the inflation, we had this thing paid off in 23 years. So we definitely slipped. Inflation beat us up there, but I still think it's a great investment. And I want you to look at the long game, I guess, more so than the immediate cost. At the end of the day, if we don't do anything, we still have the need for buildings. We haven't resolved that, you know, and if we don't fix the efficiencies, then, you know, we identified $15 million for the leaks, I guess, over the next 50 years that we can't fix unless we put people where we need them instead of having to make extra drives every day. So I think the value of the plan's still there, even with inflation. It's not what we wanted. It's not how we started. It's not what I thought I'd deliver, but it still works. The next one. You had a plan done in 2018. I think the cost then was about 1.6 to renovate the building I'm in. Obviously, that's 2 stories. Tim's crying.
Yeah. Actually, I'm laughing.
So you had the renovation costs of the building I'm in at 1.6 and 18. It's probably closer to 2.4 now. Obviously, I'm only in about half that space. From the same presentation, you had the services building, which has been demolished. You see a lot of comparables between there. They're only a year different in age. So, I mean, if you think of that as an old building, you should probably think of the other building as an old one as well. So if you pop down another one, office space, you know, the space I'm on the second floor now, about 5,300 square feet up there, 11.6 that whole building, and a 2.4 renovation. Proposed building, I'm going about 5,400 square feet for the office part, so pretty modest improvement in space there. It's a better use of space. That's why it really hasn't changed. It does allow for some growth for us. The other thing that I get there is a training space that I can fit my employees in. Obviously, training and safety and all these other things we need to do need to be done easier, I guess. We're kind of struggling with room for people in appropriate spaces. So it allows us to do training as well. Went past there.
Go back
Go back
to
one.
that one real quick. So that's 2022 renovation cost of that building at 2.3?
Yes, that was me just putting the
Guesstimate to it?
yeah, it's
Okay,
my guesstimate based on what my estimate increased
okay,
over my bid, so
okay. Thanks.
that wasn't HGM's number.
Which you use about half of that space.
Yeah, I use half that space, so you move, everybody else in the building will have a home except for me, so I'm gonna be the lone squatter there.
But that 2.3 is renovating the whole building though, right?
Right, but
Okay.
once you break into it, you can't
Right,
renovate
right,
half the
right.
building,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
you're stuck with the whole building renovation.
Yeah.
Go to the next one. The fleet building, quite a bit larger here than what we have. I mean, we're pushing $16 million in assets and vehicles, which is just terrifying for what we do. But right now we have 3 mechanic bays. They're 50 feet deep, which doesn't get a semi all the way in when they want to work on a semi. So I guess I should have had them pull a semi in there so you can see what sticks out. But so they're out in that parking lot working on equipment occasionally. Right now we've had a skid loader in that last bay. They can't get some bushings or something for it. It's been sitting there for almost a month and they're putting it together and moving it out. So we kind of get stuck with these 3 bays and 2 mechanics. If the part's unavailable or have to wait for it to come in or whatever else, something just gets stuck there. So the new building's about 78 feet deep. So they can get a dump truck on one side, but a semi is going to take up the whole bay. So it's kind of got more flexibility to it. And that'll really help the mechanics keep moving on projects and not really be down because the bays are being occupied waiting for parts.
John, where would the sign shop be in this building?
Is the second door. That's pretty much the sign shop, is just a pull through bay. Right now, that Lewis shop on Greenview, it's about 2,400 square feet. We're gonna replace that with about 2,000. We're getting away with a little smaller area because we have that fabrication area that the sign shop can use and the mechanics, so they'll share that space to do some fabrications. Inventory obviously can be shared between the sign shop and the fleet inventory as well. There is a wash bay in the end of this thing, full depth there. Then at the end of the building here, we have a materials lab, testing lab for engineering department. We're moving that closer to town. Right now we drive all the way out to the central shop to test materials. A lot of times that's nowhere near our project, so we have a lot of drive time caught up in that. So our technical people will be just across the parking lot and their lab would be here, so that really saves us a lot of time for those folks. So I guess as far as ideas to pay for this thing, I'm going to throw urban renewal up here, and basically you're in this area now. You have a district over the courthouse campus, and relocation is an eligible expense. So it would take some work. I have to do some research, but I think relocation of the engineering department would qualify in that district. Obviously, we need an attorney to figure that one out.
Will you repeat that?
Relocation assistance
Yeah.
is an eligible expense in your urban renewal district.
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I thought it had to
You
be
can give them
continuous.
property, but you have to relocate those people. I mean, there's processes for all that in there.
These are funds, but
I don't know.
Well, so,
I'm just helping you spend money. I don't actually know.
to answer your question, yes, but there's only so much that falls off every so often. So, I mean, we'd have to look at the debt service levy schedule and see when those would fall off. And I don't know, like our next one, Mitch can correct me if I'm wrong, it's something like 5 cents or something, maybe falls off the next one. So, I mean, you'd have to look at that over the course of, first off, it'd have to be phased. Secondly, you know, a penny's $56,000, stretch that over, I don't know, 10 years, 20 years, I mean, then it starts adding up, but I still don't know if we're gonna hit the number you need for that.
I'm just throwing it out there, but I did want to point out that you have 2 plans from 18 still. You know, you can see the one with the annex still there and the one where the annex becomes parking. So you still have a campus plan, and without the office building, I'm still in the annex. Go to the next one there. So really just run through what I think is available. Lost bonds, we still have about $6 million set aside for this project. I gotta get through some buildings salvage. I gotta get those other shops sold. We have about 5 buildings to sell. Board funds, I feel like you guys said you had 700,000 for me, but we'll see what that adds up to. So,
We kidding.
okay, so right now I'm setting about 7,250. If you subtract what we save in the reduction in scope from the bid price, we're probably with a 1.5 shortfall. We gotta get an estimate before we really know that number, but just winging it for today's discussion. So from there, I guess, obviously, where I would find new money, I guess, would be ask the board for more. Urban renewal, if that's an option, I don't know if it's not, then obviously reserves. I got about 5 million in reserves.
you think all the buildings being sold around the county would be 600,000?
Yes, we're waiting on appraisal, so I'll have that number in just a couple weeks.
Central, what do you think Central would be worth?
We're not gonna sell the central, so actually, it's kinda nice, 'cause it opens up some space, so we'll keep using that space there. We just won't have mechanics or that inventory there. So those people come out and those bays get used, so. Yeah, that's not one we're selling. So that's kinda where I'm at for money.
Can you go back to your efficiency slide real quick? Okay, so you said over 50 years, we leaked $15 million. Is that consistent as far as your number growing? So does it compound to 15 million over time, or is it, you know, after 15 years, or what, I guess, after 25 years, are you saying that you're 7.5 million leak? I mean, How does that number, so I'm trying to figure out where your ROI is here.
Right, so for the full build out versus not doing anything was 312. So Hancock's already done, we're kinda on the fence whether or not we're gonna do the office building, I think. So, yeah, the full build out, I was 312, 100 a year in efficiencies I could add
Okay,
by having these changes.
okay. Thank you.
And like I said, when we started this, we're probably even in the 21 to 23 year range, so it definitely has slid.
You guys have a life of the ground source heat pump? What's the average life on that, do you know?
For the loop field, so that kind of varies. I mean, 25 years is pretty reasonable.
Okay.
Longer is not out of the question.
And does that go to a forced air system?
Yes, you'll have heat pumps that are forced air, that are tied onto that system,
Okay.
yes. We also have the in-floor radiant, a portion of that connected to it as well to pick up
Okay.
the efficiencies.
And that is in this?
Yes, we did not remove the
Okay.
in-floor. And you'll have backup boiler heat to serve both the geothermal and the in-floor. But if you're gonna put the geo in, it makes sense to connect everything because you pick up so much efficiencies there.
Okay.
So we didn't have a decision for you today, it was just a discussion, so I wanted you to know what we've done with the scope, and obviously you can see what my recommendation is gonna be further down the line, but we did build in the option that the office building is an alternative, so if everything goes sideways, I guess that's still an alternative so the project can move forward. So, getting these mechanics better space really helps us as a department, more so than the office buildings.
We don't know the bid number between the two because it was bid as a package, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Are you gonna give us an estimate on the two separately then, are you?
Yeah, we can do that. We did take an average of what it was cost per square foot from the
Right.
bid that we did. And based on that, the alternate, if we had done that, based on that cost per square foot was 2.8, so.
2.89.
Would it be right to assume the shop building would be a little less because there wouldn't be as much, what do you want to say, aesthetic work done inside of it to that?
I mean, there wasn't really much for aesthetics in the office building
But you
either.
have all the walls and
But you still have walls
floor,
under,
and
on the
you're gonna
office.
you're gonna have tile and carpet and that type of thing, right?
Yeah, and we still had some, I mean, there was still kind of a small break training room and you've got the testing lab and bathrooms and everything still in that maintenance building. Granted, yes, vast majority of that building was apparatus bay.
It's gonna be drop ceilings in the office building then or something?
We left all the commons areas open to
Okay.
structure, but yeah, in the offices, it was ceiling tile.
So you're thinking the square foot cost is pretty much the same for both?
Yeah, the vast
buildings?
majority of the cost that we heard once we started talking to the contractors came in with mechanical, I think was the biggest cost, which is for both buildings. And, the exterior skin, some of that cost, which again affects both buildings. But I think the biggest increase we saw was probably on the mechanical side.
Yeah, the inflation on the mechanical side has been pretty outrageous over the past 18 months. So like the low bid on the mechanical equipment, just for reference, they have it a 34% year over year inflation increase on mechanical equipment, and they projected continued inflation through the rest of the year. Because your mechanical equipment's getting hit by two sides, commodities and chips. Because all the newer equipment's smart and has chips in it, so you're hitting shortages on two different areas, and then also labor shortages. So unfortunately, we haven't seen that slow down.
And I think that big increase came out right when this was in the middle of bidding. Because we had, for all the materials, we stayed in contact with suppliers, subcontractors, and contractors just to get an idea of cost, and it hit right as this was bidding.
Yeah, and then on like the geothermal side, like I mentioned, that's 70% from what we did a couple years ago. A lot of that's all PVC piping, or a plastic type piping, so your oil impacts that heavily as well.
David, were you able to find that number?
Yeah, the IT costs would be right at $100,000 for both buildings. And the audiovisual would be 227.
227,000?
There's a large training room that requires lots of equipment.
So that's 327, so you're ballparking 350 cover. Wow.
We can just pull the wires for the audio visual. I mean, the computer stuff has to be done. We'll just take our servers with us from the annex.
Still need switches and Wi-Fi and things like that.
Does the training room have tile in it?
Carpet.
Wouldn't be as a huge savings, but, you know, you have guys coming in with their muddy boots, wouldn't it be able to be a little better just to polish the concrete some?
We could. Yeah, it's, when you're doing a training room though, the harder surfaces that you have, there's really bad echoing when you're doing, you know, training on monitors and everything.
Okay.
Well, that was enlightening.
John, in your mind, what's the ideal next step? I mean, what do you envision happening?
I see us finishing these designs up. You know, there are a lot of concepts, and I'm not sure how far we are in the design. Then I think we get an estimator or somebody more familiar with the industry, give us an estimate on that, so we have a fresh estimate. Then I think we let it with the alternatives, and we just have to decide if we're gonna find the extra money or if we're gonna use what we have and just do the shop. I think trying to leave you guys with two decisions there to make. Obviously, I'm gonna recommend the full build, but I am gonna give you the alternative for something less.
If you build, Kim, if you bid the office building separately as an
Alternate.
alternative,
Mhm.
does that increase the price of that? If you bid it as a whole package versus pulling one part of it out,
It might.
substantial?
Depends on how busy the contractors are.
Yeah, you're right. And with the way that construction costs are going, I know there's a few contractors that are looking for work now that were busy before. So I think we might be able to see better bids. I know, I've been told that we had 5 bidders the day of bid day. Why some of them didn't bid, it was either they couldn't get their numbers in or something else happened. There is interest in bidding this. Do I think it's a substantial increase if we bid it as an alternate? No.
So are the bids gonna be, I guess, somewhat subject to them being able to get their supplies and such? Are they putting any kind of special language in there? Have you seen bids lately or anything that?
Yeah, we, during pre-bid, when we do our pre-bid walkthroughs, it's an open discussion. You know, obviously you guys have seen on the addition, the increase of materials just even as things are being built. We have an open discussion, like, do not pad your bid thinking that costs are gonna increase. You know, we need to get this building built. We talk about schedules that, you know, most clients that we work with are willing to work with you on schedules, so, you know, that gets the fear of liquidated damages out, you know. We try to work with the contractors to have an idea of concerns that they may have. But truthfully, when it comes to materials and the cost of them, it's whatever it is on bid day is what we get. And they know that there's probably an increase coming down the road, so they might pad their bid just a little bit, thinking that they might have to cover that. It's just a weird time right now, you know, when it comes to cost and schedule and everything. So we try to work with the contractors up front, have those initial conversations prior to bidding. So I think that this project would get good interest knowing that we're rebidding it. We've been in contact with those that were gonna bid and just find out why they didn't, what could we do different. and we'll continue to do that. I think getting a cost estimator on board is a great idea, that they can, continuously call suppliers. We call at the day that we're doing an estimate, and like Wyatt said, we just put this estimate together 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And we're seeing another increase already, so.
On all these items, or just some of them?
Mechanical.
I'm hearing mechanical, and that's why I just heard that earlier this week, that there was another increase. So I was gonna try to track that down and see how that impacts. We try to be conservative when we put these numbers together. But we're gonna try to check that back up and see what would be changed based on what I'm hearing now. It's just, it's so fluid, I mean, currently with the inflation.
We need to look into the urban renewal deal too. See what we can do there.
Wow.
I don't know enough about the,
No, I don't either.
well, I mean, when I first read that, it talked about being like contiguous property, and you had to designate the area that light, and that was the construction area, but I don't know about the relocation thing. That wasn't something I read when I was reviewing that stuff, so.
For residential, I know it's that when you do urban renewal in
Yeah.
residential areas.
Well, that makes sense, yeah, and that, but I just don't know,
I don't know
that means
about-
government,
Governmental might be different.
Yeah.
we'll have to dig into that more.
Provided, Kim, that, the board wants to move forward with these, changes that you proposed today, what's the timeline? When should this be able to go back out for bid?
I think we could be done within a couple months. There's quite a bit of mechanical and structural that we need to revise.
It's certainly up to the board, we don't have to make a decision today, do we? I mean, if you move forward with these, revisions, give the board a chance to take a look at them and say, hey, are the downspouts, a big concern, or the getting rid of the, stormwater is a big issue, or is the, security system a big deal? I mean, those kind of things, I think, would be important to the board. If you give us an opportunity to take a look at these.
Sure.
And, we'll try to get something back to you within, I think we'll put it on the agenda for next week for open discussion with the board. And give them a chance to take a look at these items.
Sure, that sounds good,
Make a
yeah.
call from there.
The biggest items for us, like I said, when it comes to putting the drawings together, will be the mechanical system change that we discussed at the beginning. And with that lowers that roof line and the whole structure of for the office building. Those are probably the biggest, design things that we would have to draw up.
I personally don't have any issues with that. I'm a little concerned about a couple of these. I don't really want to talk about them right now, but the mechanical I'm okay with, if that's the recommendation.
Yeah, I think it's still a good system, it's good.
Yeah, still a good system, very good system.
All right, what's the pleasure of the board? I'll get this on the agenda for next week.
That would be the best thing to
Take
do.
a look at these and kind of see what we want. We're gonna give them some kind of direction to move forward on the mechanical. Do we wanna do that? I mean,
I'm good with that.
we could at least get that ball rolling, right?
Yes.
I just kinda had this going, that this was what we're doing, get you to a bid package and an estimate, so I don't know if you wanna come back and talk about each of those items, or just
Well, I
continue
think,
on?
I think there might be some of these items the board might wanna take a look at and think about. I mean, you're asking us to dump $1 million off of this without, a lot of thought or discussion, so.
Sure.
Give us a chance to take a look at it, and we'll get it on the agenda for next week, and you'll have a direction then.
Sure, thank you.
Is that all right? I mean, we're not in a race here, right?
Always in a race against inflation.
We can't
It's
change that.
going.
We were losing. We're already lost.
Okay, did you wanna make a motion to move forward on the, mechanical design, Mr. Shea?
I'd make a motion to have them, look this over and see what they can bring back to us.
Do you want a direction on the mechanical today?
We can wait till next week. If you wanna take a look at everything, that is totally fine.
Alright,
We can do that.
let's wait till next week.
Yeah.
We can look this over, talk a little more.
Yeah.
Okay. I
Is that,
rescind it.
Withdrawing.
is that okay with everybody else on the board?
Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
So, just one, do we have a square foot cost number we're dealing with right now?
Just, you mean overall in
Yeah,
general?
yeah.
We're still keeping it at what it came in at that bid for these buildings, which I think was 383.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 384 or
So
something.
it's off the 9.7?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's pretty close to what we're seeing other projects come into. Other projects, usually when we do cost estimates, we start to, as the design process goes on, we lower that contingency. We're keeping the higher contingencies on all projects, just so you're aware too, so.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Then next week, can we get like, the actual like site plan, so that these,
Site plan report.
this gives you not quite what it,
Just like the overlay map.
Sure, yep.
because, I don't know, with the elevation between, the shop and, there's quite a bit of an elevation change, right? Not on the same level, are they?
I have that picture, they're pretty flat.
There'll be some slope on parking lot, but they're pretty much the same elevation.
They
Just be
are.
a swale in between.
You've been out there?
Oh, yeah, I've been out
Yeah.
there. Yeah, but I thought that one sat like off a little bit and down. But-
In earlier designs, we had something like that, yeah.
Okay, it's
Yeah.
changed then.
Yeah, it has.
Okay.
We reduced some of the paving by laying the buildings out different,
Okay,
so that kind of changed the evolution of the project, so.
okay,
So, yeah, you did see that once before.
okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, HGM.
Sure.
Thank you. ETI.
Partners.
We don't claim them.
Thanks, David, for looking at it.
So David's number would be what? 5 months? How old is that?
It's probably 4 months old, yeah. We're seeing delay in shipping for sure. Prices haven't changed all too much, but shipping is 9 months out.
Wow.
Okay, John, you're still up. This is, pipeline inspection requirement, consideration of the salt inspection for land restoration enforcement. John, you're up.
Sure. Talked to Scott a couple times, and he's been interested to what we need to do for the potential pipeline. Kind of going through the duties there, we have a responsibility to inspect the work on private property. So obviously, I have all the road crossings I'm dealing with, and I'm fine with that, and the pipeline's pretty much doing those as I would like them done. So that part's been easy, but there's land restoration that's kind of at your feet or my feet or however you want to deal with it. But there needs to be a professional engineer that inspects the work on private property to make sure they're putting the farmland back the way it was. So they'll file a plan with the state. They'll have an engineer on site just making sure they do it right. Then additionally, you are required to check the checker basically to make sure it's getting done. So I guess where that could go is if a farm owner claims damages, you could go to your condemnation board, the compensation committee for that. So it'd become a county process to resolve those damages. So obviously I don't really want to be involved on private property. I'm all on the right of way now, and I don't want the potential to be in the
So John,
settling damages.
This is the Summit pipeline, correct?
Right.
Going down Highway 59 corridor down to Shenandoah, is that the one you're talking about?
Right.
But the one that was originally looking at possibly going east-west over the Sires, at this point is not, it's not happening as of right now. Let's just put it that way. I don't know that it ever will, but I'm just saying, so when Summit Carbon came through, they have a firm that typically does these things, that kind of follows them along. And so they've already reached out to Matt Wyant's office and offered their services. And so I'm curious, have you been in contact with that individual at all, or are you even aware of that?
No, I'm not.
So
Just
just my 2 cents. I think we absolutely eliminate your office from this entirely, with the exception of obviously where road crossings are or whatever. But I think we need to look at an outside firm to handle this, and that has been the recommendation of these pipeline companies as well. So.
Well, that outfit that I think they originally contacted.
Yeah, they contacted me, I sent them over on you guys.
I went to me too, I mean, yeah.
Pardon?
He contacted me as well.
Right,
Obviously.
well, I think he may have contacted us all, but,
At the meetings, the biggest contention is who inspects, who does the final inspection. Because they showed a lot of grounds not put back proper, and it kind of got all swept under the rug. A lot of people are really concerned about that.
Oh,
I
as they
think
should
that's
be, yeah.
gonna be really important to hold these people's feet to the fire. Because they had a lot of pictures of damage, and they just shoved it in and called it good and left, and they didn't. There's a lot of farmers out there very.
I mean, compaction is
concerned
probably the
about this.
biggest concern I think that a lot of the farmers have, and, you know, that particular company's, you know, advertising that they're gonna restore it to original or better than what it was, and that they're guaranteeing it for so many years and blah, blah,
And
blah.
that's what a lot of them do.
As a county, we're required by the Iowa Utilities Board to have this inspector do this. So, I mean, I don't think we should be doing it internally. I really
No.
think it should be third party, and I don't know, I'm not saying that guy's the one that should do it, or that firm, but I really think.
well, the thing is that, JEO is doing it for Carbon Solutions. is that-
Carbon Summit, yeah.
Carbon Summit, and some of the counties around us have also, I don't know, signed a dual contract with JEO to do their inspections, which I don't think that's probably the most prudent one to do. I don't know how you select an outfit to do it.
Like this, from what I've I mean, full disclosure, I work in this industry, right? So the ethanol world, seems like the different companies that are out there have a firm that kind of follows each pipeline. So, you know, Summit Carbon has this group, there's 2 other outfits in Iowa that are doing this as well, and they each have their own as well. So I don't know. I mean, I shouldn't say their own, I'm just saying that there's a firm that's following their pipeline.
experience with
Right.
pipeline.
So I don't know.
So that's really my question, I guess. Do you want me to try to get proposals for you? Is Matt going to do it, or you guys want to do it? I just want to make sure that you see this coming and know you have some
I'd
responsibilities
like to
here.
find other counties and see what they're saying. Who they used and
I can't remember if it's JEO or ISG, but I think Shelby used,
what the consensus was there with the farmers. I'd
the
really like to see what they say, 'cause
yeah, the restoration plan's pretty specific with what they got to do. It's just somebody's got to be there. And they'll have their own consultant there making sure they do it. Then what you're really doing is you're checking the checker, basically. So
Right.
it's not nearly as intense as what the pipeline company's doing. And we're not looking at pipe welds or anything like that. It's just backfills.
I mean, so we have no jurisdiction, this is the Iowa Utilities Board that gets to really make the final say on, you know, the bad words of eminent domain. That's their gig, but yet they want us to double check it, you know, and I don't get it, because we really, even if we double check and say it's not right, what authority do we really have?
Yeah, there's more stuff in the administrative code. I don't want to resolve any damages or any of those
No, but I mean, the
claims.
reality is there's nothing we can do. So I mean,
Right.
pushing a requirement on us, we're gonna have to spend taxpayer money to,
No.
they
You get reimbursed.
supply the funds for it.
not until afterwards, so we have to use our money to
Okay,
pay the
you're
guy
right.
as
Correct.
reimbursement.
Yeah, the administrative code says that the pipeline company is responsible to pay reasonable costs of county inspectors. And I mean, as far as your authority goes, the County Board of Supervisors can file a complaint with the Iowa Utilities Board for the imposition of civil penalties if they're in violation. So you yourselves can't really do much other than you raise the complaint, and then, the Iowa Utilities Board can act after that.
But we're responsible for the hiring of that for a private landowner.
You have to have a county inspector that has to be a professional engineer. It does not have to be the county engineer, but it has to be a licensed professional engineer under chapter, what is it, 479 or 524? I mean, what's the?
79.
479.
So does that have to be done by a resolution, or how do we do that by a con?
And is this all approved? This isn't all approved yet.
No, I don't.
This one is?
The one to Shenandoah, GPRE has already agreed they're moving forward with that project, so this is happening. Now, I mean, obviously, they have to go through all the other land
Right.
acquisitions or right-of-way acquisition, whatever all that entails. But it's going down, my understanding is it's going down Highway 59, pretty much, that corridor anyway.
Right.
And,
You've been contacted by somebody, haven't you?
Yes, they come in and talk about road crossings and what we wanna do, and we're gonna be 5 feet under the ditch bottom, so we're plenty deep. They're gonna bore the right of way, so we're not really gonna have an open trench on the right of way, so majority of the work's gonna be on private property. Won't be much to see on the county roads.
Justin, you said that, what was the name of that company that's got the route to Shenandoah?
Green Plains Renewable Energy, GPRE.
So that's the firm that will be doing the project in?
No. So Summit Carbon Solutions doing the pipeline project. The GPRE is the ethanol plant that's down there.
Oh,
So these pipelines, just so everyone's aware, I mean, these pipelines are basically attaching to ethanol plants, because right now, majority of the carbon dioxide goes out to the atmosphere. And if not, they have maybe a co-located plant on site that will take a slipstream of, up to say 50% of the overall carbon dioxide that goes out. They use that to create dry ice or, clean it up even more for your beverage grade, carbonation. So the whole idea here is that all this carbon dioxide gets basically pumped into a pipeline. That pipeline goes all the way up to North Dakota and gets pumped underground into a cavity. And that cavity, over time, it's like a liquid state, and it basically will solidify over a long period of time. There's a tax incentive for that, and it pays something to the neighborhood of, it's like $50 a pound. To give you an idea, a plant that's the size of the one I work in here in Council Bluffs, we produce just shy of 1,400 pounds a day. So there's a substantial tax credit there of money that can be captured by this. But this is a federal program that could go away with the next administration. So I think there's risk there that people are super concerned about. Now, the ethanol plant I work at this time, we've decided that, what happens, so I should tell you this too, the ethanol plants, by going this route and doing this, it also allows them to sell to low carbon fuel markets, which is on the western side of the country. So you can get to like California, Nevada, Oregon, you can sell west, more or less. Whereas right now, your only option is to go east and south. So, I think there's pluses and minuses of this entire project, but as of right now, GPRE, they have signed on to do that one coming down 59. And I don't know, Summit Carbon is the one that has that one. The other one out there is called Navigator. And I forget the other outfit, but there's one more that's looking to try to get this way. They have to do it by a certain date too. They have like 2 years or something to get it all accomplished in order to take advantage of this credit. So that's kind of the background of this whole thing, but.
Well, do you think, get John and Matt, come back and see who wants to drive the bus, or?
I think Matt is further along in this conversation than we all think, because Matt's brought this up maybe 3 months ago when it first was pitched to Sire, when we went to that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's kind of already has an idea of who we should consider looking at already.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm not saying he has, but that probably what our direction should be is to have you go talk with Matt and produce a couple of firms that you guys would think would be reputable enough to do it. From our perspective, this is a requirement we have to do. I don't wanna call it a rubber stamp, but what I don't like is I don't know is if this company's gonna pay their salaries ahead of time, or if we have to pay it up front and then get reimbursed on their schedule, which I don't like. And so.
Just about everything's reimbursement from the state, so.
Right. But you never know exactly when you're gonna get those dollars necessarily, and, you know, how many times are we gonna tie up our funds? You know, that's my only concern there. But I do believe it'll all get reimbursed. I don't think it's gonna be a loss to us, but, you know, you start taking away your operating money, cash on hand money, that weighs into what we do.
Do you think there's any value in I'm talking to Matt Wilbur, in passing any of those resolutions? I think I forwarded them on to you.
I already told you, my legal opinion is that I don't have no legal opinion. That's not a legal question, that's a political question, and that's why you guys get those jobs and I got my job. So there is no legal issue with doing or not doing anything with regard to eminent domain and pipelines and all that stuff. There's just, we're not involved. It's Iowa Utilities Board, that's it. If you feel like there's some political benefit for passing a symbolic gesture, have at it, but that is not a legal issue.
I think there was, 17 counties or whatever that passed the resolution, so, okay.
Well, I think that's something that, the board needs to consider. I don't know if now's the time, but sometime down the road that, you know, eminent domain is primarily for a government purpose.
Right.
This is a private company. In my personal opinion, they shouldn't have eminent domain rights, to take or force a landowner to allow them to run a pipeline through their farm.
Yeah,
So-
it's kinda like Matt said though, it just ends up being kind of a symbolic gesture in the end. I mean, we really don't have a say.
Well, I've been asked quite a bit why we haven't signed one. And I think that's probably what you've been doing. And we need to think about it.
I'll just caution you, you don't have any of that on your agenda for today. So if you wanna think
Yeah.
about it, I'd think about it next week.
Okay, we'll think about it.
Well, we do have pipeline for discussion.
Yeah, but you don't have symbolic gestures for
No.
whether eminent domain is.
No.
I'm just telling you, proceed at your own risk.
Thank you.
Right.
Thanks.
All right, well, we'll put that on for next week's discussion.
So are you, John, are you guys in agreement with that though, that we just have you go talk to Matt and see if you already, Matt may already have something already in line, and then you guys can bring it back to us. And we
can
agree,
bring that into
we're on your
next week.
team, we don't want you having to be the one to do this, so don't think that we were gonna stick that on you.
Right, and I'll find out who the firms are doing it in Shelby and Montgomery or Mills or wherever it comes in on this how
It'd be good to get some you know, as Scott mentioned, it'd be good to get some feedback from them too, you know, or maybe it's Brian Wayne too, sorry.
We can't see using the same one that the pipelines use.
I don't.
I would like to
That's
use
not
Wayne County
interesting.
anyway.
I'll just stick around here.
Okay. Right, thanks, John. Next up is Becky coming in.
No, Becky's ill today. She's just gonna replace her name where Becky Belt's name was on those FEMA reimbursements.
Speak in your
The
behalf.
resolution for the FEMA to get a name on
You can see.
the document.
Is that,
So that's not for,
That's
what, I guess, I think Wishcott does their own, this is jail, and the sheriff do their own FEMA stuff, and Matt Wyatt, and
Well, yeah, and all that kind of runs into Becky, and then
her, the ability to
and then
sign all those, or,
and then on the buyouts and the,
right, exactly.
and anything that the drainage districts have.
Okay.
It's just changing the name on that required form.
Who's all on there, we should probably, I think you're allowed up to 3 different people, we should probably find out.
Oh, we put alternates on there too.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I suppose, I mean,
Is this time sensitive, Mr.
I
Hauser?
want this to be in.
I don't know
Well,
whether it is or
I
not.
think we might as well get her on there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But if we can, if you wanna
I'll make that.
put
motion.
Dixie or,
We can just amend it later.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
second it, and then we can look at the alternates.
so I'd like to get,
and that's probably, could be safer to have, you know, Mitch or Dixie on there also.
Yeah.
I don't know what the requirements are.
Okay, any other discussion for Mr. Hauser on this? Mr. Hauser, call the roll, please.
Chairman Wickman, Supervisors Belt,
Aye.
Ruby, Schultz,
Aye.
Jay.
Aye.
Oh, that's good later.
Yeah, you all done after.
Yeah.
Mr. Willoughby.
Oh, that's good.
All right. Next up, Jenna Lemrit, discussion decision to approve and authorize the board to sign the AFSCME road employees agreement effective July 1st, 2022. Jenna, you're up.
So the first on there, you have got their union contract. Nothing changed in that union contract except in regards to the wages. So we made the same wage changes for them that we made for everyone else, moving the range 1.5%, and then everyone gets a step equaling 4%. However, we added that grade 10 and grade 12 for your bridge crew and your mechanic.
I'll make a motion to approve that.
It's a 3-year deal?
Is that?
With a wage reopener.
Okay.
So we will be back at the table again this winter to talk about wages. Yes.
So, yeah, I was looking through that section on the wage, and then payroll's got some concerns on how that's going. It's the steps are going up 1.5.
Yep, so we'll do it really the same way we did it last year. We'll enter a new range into the system, and then we'll move employees a step.
Okay, now what about step 11? That was the concern. Are they just gonna get the 1.5 then?
They get 4%. So everyone gets a 4%. And Jenna and I have talked about that briefly, and we'll continue to have discussions on what that's
He's
gonna
saying
look like.
1.5 and 2.5.
For
Well-
those within the step, yes.
Well, the steps are gonna go up, because the employees are paid by the step that they're on. So if you're on step 5,
Right.
step 5 is gonna go up by 1.5%. And then as that person moves to 6 step, there's another 2.5 on July 1st when they make that move. But those people on step 11 are not moving.
That's
So.
right, they're gonna get a 4%.
So they're going into a bucket. They're not going
So
into a
then
step.
Step 11 is going up by 4%?
No.
No.
They go, Melvin, they move into bucket 12.
So we're gonna make a bucket, we're gonna make another step.
Yeah, you know, what we're doing is we're approving the negotiations that we did with our unions.
Right, right, right.
If you have some issues with how
Okay,
it's gonna be
all
handled,
right.
you work with Jenna on that.
Okay.
Okay. We get a motion in a second on this.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a
Who's the
motion-
second? Shay?
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Jenna, you're up again with the,
Memorandum of understanding.
memorandum of understanding.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, Jenna.
Yep, so this is the MOU that we do every year with the roads team since we took this out of their contract in 2020 where they can cash out 40 hours of their comp time once a year.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions for Jenna? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Jenna's still up. This is the communications 911 employees.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were gonna keep going. Yes, it is. This is the union contract with our 911 employees. We made a few wording changes in the contract to make things a little easier to understand, but the biggest change was in regards to their wages, recognizing the difficult time that they have with recruitment and retention. The board and the union agrees, well, if you sign this, agreed to start their starting pay up by $2, and then the whole range moves from there.
So approved.
Really excited to get that going July 1st for them.
Any questions for Jenna on this?
No, I made the motion to approve it.
All in favor?
Yeah, I got you, Brian.
Anyone else want to second it? Apologize.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And then we have the MOU for ASME.
Yeah, so this is 911's MOU, and again, the chapter 20 changes that started in 17, but we took in effect in 2020, has supplemental pay that it can't be in the contract. And so supplemental pay is anything additional that's not your base pay. So you have in there uniform, longevity, working out of class pay, things like that. Those haven't changed. This is the same MOU that we've done for them. What is in addition to this is some wording for their 12-hour shifts. Because they'll be starting those 12-hour shifts July 1st, but we thought it would be best to have those in an MOU, very similar to how the deputies did it. When they went to 12 hours, then once it's successful and it's gonna stay, then we'll move it into the contract. But right now it's in an MOU. And there will be one more MOU coming with some additional details about the 12-hour shift.
So moved.
Second.
Yeah, don't we have the issue of the on-call? Is that in the agreement?
The on-call pay? Nope, it is on, yeah. 1, 2, I think the 4th page, or sorry, section 3G, that the on-call pay did change, you're right. Yes. Thank you for remembering that.
Right. Any questions for Jen on that? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thanks, Jen, for that. Next up, we have David Byer, CIO, discussion and approval of the following policies. We'll start off by the website privacy, legal, and linking policy. David, you're up.
Sure. So this policy was written to be attached to the county website so that users would know what risks there are by using the site. Not that there are lots of risks, but we should outline them. The fact that, if they use the site, there could be damages. We don't want to be responsible for those. The privacy issue, if they click on certain links and they use the site a certain way, we do collect information. They should know that. What kind of links that we have on the site. We're not responsible for links from our site to other sites. Those aren't, we're not responsible for any damages there. So it's really just a proactive policy that we should have on our website. Once if it were to be approved, I would share this with the other websites that were also managed in the county. Conservation site, sheriff's site, election site, those kinds of sites.
So moved.
Any questions or discussion with either David or Jen on this?
Kind of like that little fine print box that sometimes pops up and you hit okay, no one ever reads it kind of thing.
Right. Just to protect us and them.
Okay, we motion in a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Next up, we have the acceptable use policy. David?
Sure, so the acceptable use policy is general use of how employees should use the network, use computers, use data, use passwords, things of that nature, what they should and should not do. A lot of these things are obvious, but not always. And so we wanted to codify it and put it on paper and outline it and make that available. This would be part of the employee handbook. So we would add a section for technology or IT or information, whatever you want to call it. But this would be part of the employee handbook. We feel it's that important. It applies to just about every employee. So that's what it's for.
So I kind of have a question about it, just in respect to, so conservation, we pick on them with this one. They have someone who does a lot of their messaging and things like that. I mean, I guess I'm curious with your policy, are you saying things like social media should be used for these purposes or something?
It does not address social media, no.
Okay. What are the restrictions then? Like what, can you highlight a couple for me?
So I can highlight a few. So certainly you shouldn't use county equipment for a personal business.
Yeah.
You shouldn't do illegal activity. You shouldn't try to go around securities that we've set up.
So we're gonna have everyone sign this as part of the understanding of the handbook? Is that how you're handling it?
Yes. Yeah, so we'll create a new section, it'll be section 800.
I like it, it helps cover us.
Yeah.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion with Jen or David? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Next up, we have discussion decision on the public relations position. I put this on to make sure and get the approval from the board to move forward with this position or not move forward with it. So, what's the pleasure of the board?
Well,
I'd like to make a motion to approve this position, and with that, I'd also like to, for the board to consider a 6-month review of the position and the wages to ensure that we're in line and keeping with the goals that we have in place.
But, you know, if I can, Supervisor Schultz, that could be part of a discussion if we hire someone. I just want to make sure the position, we're going to move forward with the position on this.
I just want to make sure somehow, some way, the 6-month review is
We
solidified.
normally
I
have
don't
6
care
months
how we do it.
probation, not on the
Doesn't matter.
probation.
If you want to do a discussion, that's fine.
But there's no
I can amend that.
We can bring that up on,
Raise.
It's fine.
when we bring somebody on, we
Oh,
bring them in,
you're right.
talk to
But
them.
just
We just pulled it from the
Review,
handbook, that's
that's
fine,
right.
that's statement, that's all.
Okay.
I feel the department heads have wanted this for a long time, we've needed it. We've approved the job, we've approved the budget, it's budgeted in there. And I think it could be good for everybody in the county to know what's going on with everything, so it could lead to more transparency, I think. So I will second that.
Is there any other discussion?
You know, I asked Matt Wyatt to come today because I felt that a lot of, you know, when we went to, and I don't want to get into a big discussion about this, but I asked him to come because one of the things that he talked about at one of our board retreats really stuck with me about this position and the needs, and this is something that's kind of come up a lot over the time that I've been on the county board, and I just felt that I guess I just wanted to ask for, if you can restate your kind of thoughts on that again, Matt. That's really all I really have for discussion.
The thoughts that I've always circled around on the PIO position, this is a position that we have talked about for Potawatomi County since, I think it was probably when Tim initiated the board retreats to talk about what we could use as a county. And it was being able to get the message of the county out to the public in different forms than relying on the local newspaper to put it out there, which I think we all know we don't have much of a local newspaper anymore, kind of when it got bought out. But public scrutiny is something that I think with the social media age is only going to increasingly get heightened on everything that we're doing. And we all know that on the social media side, it has a tendency to really grab onto the negative side of effects and take off of it. We need to have that person at the county who is focusing on the positive things that are going on and getting that message out to as many people as we can and in many different forms as we can. And in the conversations that have been happening the last week in another area, we talked a lot about equity and what that means for people in, you know, general. And it can mean a lot of different things, but there's equity also in information and how we get that out to people and how we share that to the public. We've had in the past, you know, we've had at least 3 of them that really popped to mind, situations that have come up in Pot County that were really avoidable if we would have had the messaging attached to that. And it's not only external messaging, it's internal messaging. So all of us as department heads and employees speaking the same language and being able to relate that information out in our circle of friends, family, to the people that are out there. But I really do feel like this position will be a benefit to us and help out in those areas because the media forms are going to be evolutionarily changing. We struggle with getting that information out. Even just thinking back to the public health building and, you know, putting the RFP out into the local paper and how, you know, how can we better spread that message out there? And I think this person's gonna really be able to help us focus in on that and do a lot more right than we have missteps.
Thank you.
I'll just make a couple of real quick comments. You know, when we started looking at this position, I was in was with the board, I was in favor of taking a look at it. You know, since that time, you know, inflation's really taken over. If you believe what's in the news, that, it's gonna cost an average family another $5,300 to live this year. We've had a meeting with our county assessor, who told us that we'll have limited to no growth next year. And I just think adding a position at this point in time, I just can't support it, so. Any other discussion? Mr. Hauser, you call the roll, please.
You wanna call a roll call? Okay, Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. That's the first time you had me go first.
Is it? Are you happy now?
Yeah, thank you.
Supervisor Groby.
No.
Supervisor Shea.
Yes.
Is it my turn?
Not yet.
Okay, just briefly follow.
Whoa, we're still, I got two more to do here. Supervisor Bell. And Supervisor Wickman.
Hey. Okay, next up, we have public comment. I want to read a little spiel here before we get started. The board will now allow up to 30 minutes for comments from the public. The board will call speakers to the podium in the order in which they have signed up on the form provided. Each speaker is limited to no more than 2 minutes for speaking, must speak from the podium, must first state his or her name and address for the record. Comments should be directed to the board as a whole and individual employees' positions. Comments should also be limited to one topic. Detailed information about the public comment policy is available upon request. Mr. Hauser, did anybody sign up to speak?
We have Arlen Ulrich.
Arlen are you Arlen?
I'm Arlen.
You're up.
You might come to